to try a natural cure. Seemed to be working, but then it just was a dramatic and very rapid reversal. And Sandamini and I just got back from the hospice where we applied Jamuna Jal and Tulsi Patra. So yeah, it's.
His body is going to be burned?
Yeah, it'll be burned within a week or two, depending on, the COVID line. Sometimes there's lines to get cremated. But Archana City, his wife, will let us know when it's scheduled finally. And then we'll go to the crematorium with kirtan and distribute prasadam and like that. And then she'll get the ashes and probably spread it some Mayapur or Vrindavan, Jamuna or Ganga.
Jai. So Prabhupada die.
Yes. Okay. So I'm glad I made it back. And you might remember from the last time, I will do kind of a dramatic reading of a script I made for myself. It's a streamlined version of my Founder Acharya seminars. And then at the end, I'll ask for questions and comments. So please listen actively so we have a lively discussion. So lesson 1 was called The Spiritual Masters. Now lesson 2 is called The Founder Acharya Principle. Although the English Sanskrit compound, quote, Founder Acharya is less than a century old, its seeds in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition date from the time immediately following Lord Chaitanya's departure from this world in 1534, now they say CE, Common Era. We will look at 4 of those seeds, the seeds of the Founder Acharya principle and phrase, as well as the great Gaudiya Acharyas who sowed those seeds. So the first seed we look at, I call an organizational seed. So around 1545, it might have been a year or two earlier, but at least by 1545, which is some 11 years after Mahaprabhu left this world, Lord Chaitanya's chief disciples, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, founded, and this is the original name of the Hare Krishna movement. In other words, the movement that Mahaprabhu started by his singing and dancing Hare Krishna, founded the Vishva Vaishnav Raj Sabha, which Srila Bhaktisiddhanta later identified as the gathering or congregation of devotees who worship, quote, the king of all Vaishnavas in the world, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As the Sabha's most prolific writer and philosopher, Srila Jiva Goswami also emerged as the group's most skillful organizer. For example, he founded Vrindavan's famous Radha Damodar temple, where he established a library of all the Goswami's works. Sri Jiva had those works copied and then dispatched his three best students, Srinivas, Narottam, and Shamananda, to Bengal on the first Gaudiya Vaishnava book distribution party. The story of what happened to that party, how the books were stolen by a king's thieves, how they were recovered, and how the king and his accomplices later surrendered to Krishna, foreshadowed dramas Lord Chaitanya continues to enact through ISKCON and other Gaudiya groups today. Suffice it to say that the Goswamis Sabha, dedicated to articulating, preserving, and distributing the Lord's teachings, planted the Founder Acharya principle's organizational seed. So that was within, say, a dozen of years of Mahaprabhu leaving, then there was the seed of an organizational seed. Because if you look at that phrase, Founder Acharya, there's an organizational component. Founder, somebody who founds something, establishes something. And Acharya, the exemplar, the person who embodies the principles behind that organization. So that's the organizational seed, and then there's a philosophical seed. Around 1552, just a few years after the Sabha's founding, Srila Rupa Goswami finished his landmark work, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, quote, the ocean of the pure nectar of devotional service. In his commentary to the Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita Leela, chapter 5, text 203, Prabhupada writes, quote, Srila Rupa Goswami is described as the Bhakti Rasacharya, or one who knows the essence of devotional service. His famous book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is the science of devotional service. And by reading this book, one can understand the meaning of devotional service. Now, so essential for devotees did Srila Prabhupada consider Sri Rupa's masterwork that for more than 6 months in 1969, Prabhupada suspended his Bhagavatam writing to produce a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu called The Nectar of Devotion. In his introduction, Prabhupada writes that, quote, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him, following in the footsteps of the great acharyas and the personal spiritual master. So Prabhupada is making a distinction there between great acharyas and one's personal spiritual master. Later in the book, Prabhupada repeats the distinction between, quote, the great acharyas and the personal spiritual master. By the way, he translates Sri Rupa's phrase, sadhuvartmanuvartanam, which Prabhupada renders as, quote, following in the footsteps of great acharyas, teachers, under the direction of the spiritual master, unquote. You may recall in lesson 1 of this series, we learned that initiating and instructing spiritual masters, they act like parents and relatives, respectively. As a child may at first see his parents and relatives as everything, then matures to see them in perspective. So a disciple may initially see his spiritual masters and relatives as everything, then matures to appreciate them in relation to, as Prabhupada put it, the great acharyas. To help us understand this philosophical seed of the founder acharya principle, we will now hear how the acharya sampradaya culture, as Prabhupada put it, the line of prominent shiksha exemplars who make up our disciplic succession, inspired one famous disciple to beg his great guru to bring him closer to their foundational acharya. Okay, so far we have the organizational seed planted as the Sri Vishva Vaishnava Raj Sabha, basically established by the 6 Goswamis. And then within a few years more, we have this cultural seed, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which made that distinction between great acharyas and what Prabhupada would call regular gurus. So here's the cultural seed involving a famous disciple of a famous guru. Before the Gaudiya Vaishnava saint Srila Narottam Das Thakur was born, Lord Chaitanya told Lokanath Goswami, quote, within a short time, a prince named Narottam will become your disciple. He will be a gifted devotee, full of love and devotion, and empowered to save the fallen conditioned souls from hellish life. His enchanting, beautiful kirtan will melt even wood or stone. That's from a text called Narottam Vilas. Now, after the Lord left this world, however, Sri Lokanath was so distraught that he withdrew from everyone and vowed never to accept disciples. Later in Vrindavan, when Sri Jiva noticed that Narottam was drawn to the saintly Lokanath, Sri Jiva told Narottam to approach Lokanath for initiation. But as ardently as Narottam approached Lokanath, just as adamantly Lokanath refused. Resolved, nonetheless, Narottam, the son of a king, vowed to become Lokanath's menial servant and took to cleansing the area where the saint performed his early morning ablutions. So everyone knew that Lokanath Goswami had made this vow never to accept disciples and was so mortified by Mahaprabhu's passing that he just withdrew. And nonetheless, Sri Jiva told Narottam, one of his prized pupils, now you go approach Lokanath and beg him for initiation. But Lokanath, true to form, refused. But Narottam, see, he was from royalty. He was a royal, as we would say today. So he knew that along with that kind of birth, there's comes some baggage of false pride. So he resolved, even though he'd been apparently rejected by Lokanath, that he was just going to serve his Guru Maharaj, whom he'd already given his heart to, in a menial way, to break that royal pride. So every morning he would get up, and he knew Lokanath's habits, Narottam did. So before Lokanath did his morning ablutions, he would go and fix, smooth the earth and make sure he had enough water. And okay, so Lokanath was so absorbed in his solitary Krishna meditations, even though he noticed someone was cleansing his ablution area, he paid it little mind. But one day, after an entire year had passed, he decided to find out who was so conscientiously cleaning up after him. The next morning, he came earlier than usual and hid behind a tree. When Narottam approached, Lokanath saw who it was. Narottam, it's you! His identity exposed, Narottam fell at the saint's feet and begged to be accepted as his disciple. Lokanath refused at first, then later relented, remembering Mahaprabhu's prediction and conquered by the pure devotion of this saintly devotee. Now, although Srila Narottam Das Thakur became the only initiated disciple of Srila Lokanath Goswami, so their bond was very strong. You might try to draw from our own experience. If you have an only child, like I have a daughter, and she's actually visiting me here in Tucson, and she's an only child. So her mother and me and her, it's a pretty strong bond because there's no other children to distribute our affection to. So Narottam, so to speak, was an only child, the only initiated disciple of Lokanath. And yet, Narottam wrote a bhajan. He wrote so many songs. We sing them. We sing at least one every day, Shri Guru Charana Padma, Shri Guru Vandana. And when somebody disappears, we'll probably sing tomorrow, we'll probably sing, since the passing of Karnamrita Prabhu just happened, we might sing, before Bhagavatam, we might sing Ye Nilo Premadana. That's also Narottam. So Narottam, he wrote so many songs, and in Song 17 of his collection, Prarthana, verse 4, Narottam longs for Lokanath to bring Narottam, to their ultimate shelter in the disciplic succession, Srila Rupa Goswami, because Sri Rupa, he was the leader. He was, as soon as that Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu was published, even though Sri Rupa was not the eldest, even though he wasn't the most prolific writer or famous for being the most renounced, immediately when everybody read the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, they, wow, this is he's the most expert at relishing the mellows of devotional service. He's our group leader. So the phrase founder acharya wasn't there. The English weren't even there in India yet, but he was called the Bhakti Rasacharya, Prabhupada said in that CC purport. So, and yet Narottam wrote this song, and in verse 4 of the 17th song in that collection, Prarthana, Here's the Bengali. I'll try not to butcher it. Prabhu Lokanatha Kabe Sange Lanya Jabe Shri Rupera Pada Padme More Samarpibe. In plain English, quote, when will my Lord and Master Lokanath Goswami take me with him and place me at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami? Prabhu Lokanath, when will my Prabhu Lokanath, my Lord and Master, when will he take me with him and place me at the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami? So as the chief of the six Goswamis, Srila Rupa Goswami was Narottam and Lokanath's Bhakti Rasacharya, the master most expert at relishing the moods of pure devotional service to Lord Krishna. And as Narottam's Diksha Guru, Sri Lokanath had the pleasure and privilege of bringing his disciple closer to the foundational leader of the six Goswamis, Sabha. Quote, Rasacharya may sound close to Founderacharya, but by Lord Chaitanya's inscrutable will, the organizational, philosophical, and cultural seeds sown early for, quote, Founderacharya would have to wait another 3 centuries within a crucible of disgrace before finishing seeds arrived to conclusively establish the Founderacharya principle. So think about this, because most scholars agree circa 1560, Narottam published his Prarthana. So from 1545 to 1560, within 15 years, you had the organizational seed and the philosophical seed and the cultural seed. But then, by Lord Chaitanya's inscrutable will, within 100 years of his disappearance, the whole Bhakti Marg was disgraced by so many Upasampradayas, which it wasn't until, mid-late 19th century that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur identified them and convinced the Bhadralok, the Bengali aristocracy, to take a fresh look at Bengali Vaishnavism, which had been ruined by these Upasampradayas. So it was the Thakur that finally provided what I call the literary seeds. Literary seeds. In the late 19th century, of the great Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur identified and exposed more than a dozen counterfeit Gaudiya Vaishnava groups who, beginning just a century after Lord Chaitanya's departure, had effectively disgraced Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Not only did Bhaktivinoda restore Mahaprabhu's original teachings, as well as the glories of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, he also conceived of a mission to propagate Krishna consciousness globally, thus helping to fulfill a 16th century scriptural prophecy. This is from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, quote, in every town and village, the chanting of my name will be heard. When reports reached Srila Bhaktivinoda of a rising Western interest in Indian culture and Sanskrit in particular, the Thakur sent a copy of his Sanskrit work, Sri Krishna Samhita, to the American transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson. When Emerson gratefully replied by requesting books in English, Srila Bhaktivinoda penned Lord Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts, and sent copies to several Western intellectuals and universities. But it was a Bengali work by the Thakur, published in 1900 as Harinama Chintamani, that contain crowning literary seeds for the Founderacharya principle. So, Harinama Chintamani, the touchstone of the holy name. In chapter 6, Srila Bhaktivinoda describes 3 kinds of super gurus, if you will, in a disciplic tradition. The first is the Sampradayera Adi Guru, the primeval guru of the tradition. So, for example, in our Sampradaya, it's Lord Brahma. prehistorical, primeval guru. Directly enlightened by the Lord himself. Following the primeval guru are the Shiksha Guru Pratishtita, greatly revered preceptors who keep the tradition's teachings intact over long spans of time. But when the Thakur identified the third guru, he described him in the superlative, quote, however, the Adyacharya, and that's Bengali for founder acharya, basically, the Adyacharya, or original guru of a disciplic line, is appropriately worshipped and respected as the Guru Shiromani, the topmost crown jewel of the spiritual masters. His perfect philosophical conclusions are to be followed by all in his succession. Any contrary instructions will not be accepted. So, unquote. The stage was set for the founder acharya seeds to bear fruit. So we have all these seeds now, organizational, philosophical, cultural, literary, from the Thakur. Now it's just about, the phrase is just about to appear. In the 1880s, while envisioning a worldwide Krishna consciousness movement, Srila Bhaktivinoda revived the Vaishnav Raj Sabha and launched a Bengali spiritual journal, Sajjana Toshini, quote, for the satisfaction of the devotees. 4 decades later, Srila Bhaktivinoda's illustrious son, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, reinvented the Sabha as the Gaudiya mission and transformed his father's journal into The Harmonist, an English language periodical with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's scholarly disciple, Professor Nishikant Sanyal, as his co-editor. Timed to coincide with the launch of the mission's brand new Calcutta headquarters, the October 1930 Harmonist carried the first of a 3-part series by Professor Sanyal about, quote, the Gaudiya Mat. It was in this article that the founder acharya phrase, seeded for centuries, finally fructified. So it was our Ravindra Sarup Prabhu who found this, who went and pored over so many old harmonists as he was researching the booklet that the GBC published eventually, called Srila Prabhupada, the founder acharya of ISKCON. So it was Ravindra who actually found this in an old harmonist. It was October 1930 issue. It was in this article that the founder acharya phrase, seeded for centuries, finally fructified. So here's the quote from the article where you first hear this English Sanskrit hybrid compound articulated. Here's the quote. Quote, the Gaudiya Mat. Now this is Sanyal identifying Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's identity. The Gaudiya Mat is also identical with its founder acharya. The associates, followers, and abode of his divine grace are limbs of himself. Echoes of what Prabhupada would tell us later, that ISKCON is my body, you are all the limbs of my body, like that. None of them claim to be anything but a fully subordinate limb of this single individual. This unconditional, causeless, spontaneous submission to the head, in other words, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, is found to be not only compatible with, but absolutely necessary for the fullest freedom of initiative of the subordinate limbs. So the more we cooperate with our own founder acharya, the more we reach our full potential as his servants. I should say now at this point too that it won't be long before I finish speaking, so be thinking about questions and comments. Especially I would love to hear Maharaj give his input. During the Gaudiya mission's finest hour, that is the first Vaishnav preaching expedition to Europe, the book Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's leading preachers took with them was a book by Professor Sanyal called Sri Krishna Chaitanya. And it was edited by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. After Bhaktisiddhanta got the manuscript, he just, he went to one of these British hill stations, I'm not sure which one, somewhere in South India. And he just scrupulously edited the manuscript for a couple of months. So it was really a collaboration between him and Sanyal. The work was written with sufficient breadth, depth, and excellence to impress the intelligentsia of the West. In its front matter, the elaborate table of contents highlighted the intimate connection between the Adi Gurus, that is the primeval preceptors of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas, and the Sampradayas' four founder acharyas, the Adi Gurus' extraordinarily empowered representatives, who revitalized their disciplic successions within recorded history. So now Sanyal and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta are going to make explicit the connection between those, those primeval preceptors and what we know as the founder acharyas of the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. Quote, the systems of Sri Vishnu Swami, Sri Nimbarka, Sri Ramanuja, and Sri Madhva are connected with the ancient times by their recognition of the remote authority of the eternal ancient teachers, namely Lakshmi, Brahma, Rudra, and the four Kumaras, respectively. The founder acharyas of the Iron Age profess to preach the views of those original teachers of the religion. So that book, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, it strictly applied founder acharya to the four sampradayas, revitalizers, if you will, otherwise known as sampradaya acharyas. Yeah. Since Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had founded only a branch of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Math, itself but an extension of the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, he knew many would consider him presumptuous if he applied the title to himself. For the written record, however, he allowed Professor Sanyal to confidently refer to him as the Gaudiya Mission's founder acharya within the pages of the Harmonist. Now, in lesson 4 of this series, that'll be in 2 more Tuesdays, we'll see why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta could, with similar confidence, leave his founder acharya title behind. He could foresee what would soon befall his own institution, as well as the one disciple who would be ready, willing, and able to revive it as a fresh branch of Lord Chaitanya's mission, far, far away from Mother India. Okay, so I just sort of leave it there, and I'll be very happy to hear your questions and comments. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
All glories to the Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you for your very lucid presentation. I was there when Rabindra's book was just about being published in Mayapur, and so maybe it took about 2 hours, to go through the whole history and how he'd been researching it and like that and so on.
Yeah.
And so I can't comment other than that, just that you've made a very, very nice summary. How long is your seminar normally?
Well, see, that was just lesson 2 of a 10-lesson series, and for this particular lesson, instead of doing primary source research, I leaned heavily on Ravindra's research. So this lesson in the 10-lesson series is, I really owe a debt to Ravindra, because there's a lot that he did.
So much.
Although I did some, the other parts I did on my own, but yeah, so it kind of resembles Ravindra's founder acharya slideshow, and because after he published the book, he quickly realized that because he had kind of written it with academic discourse, a lot of devotees couldn't understand it. So he realized he had to travel with it and explain the book with a little concise slideshow. And but he just did that for a year. So
Yeah.
since 2012, I've been kind of traveling around, not during COVID, I've been zooming around, but just to try to help devotees understand Prabhupada's position through a 10-lesson journey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for the encouraging words.
Yeah. I get up very early, so my brain just stops, having, you can see I'm starting to mumble. my, my
So you go to bed, really early?
Well, yeah, because I get up early, very, very early, and so my face starts to shrink or something by 8:30. Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Take rest, please. Okay, Prabhus. I left a lot of gaps. I always leave gaps. So so there'll be questions. I sometimes I just say things. I leave it up to you to say, what did you mean? And how does that, is that true? Or, okay. Questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad. This is Ram Giridhari Das here.
Jai Ram.
Prabhu, when you read this, you mentioned about Bhaktivinoda Thakur quoting about three spiritual masters, Sampradaya Acharya and founder Acharya and Siksha Guru.
Mhm.
So it is interesting that he never pointed out about Diksha Guru. So so what do we, because over the current trend and also our understanding is Diksha Guru happens to be our primary connect to the Sampradaya.
Mhm.
So what's your comment on that?
Okay. Well, I think maybe, was it your good self who brought this kind of point up last time about Diksha and Shiksha and Diksha? I think
Yep.
yeah, okay. Well, in the first place, our line is not a Diksha line. It's as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called it, a Bhagavat line of Shiksha preceptors. So, for example, I think I brought up Madhva last time too, right? How Madhva appeared, 4,000 years after Vyas. But in that list that Prabhupada gave us, you see Krishna, Brahma, Narada, Madhva, or Vyas, Madhva. So it's really a line of teachers, and it's not just about Diksha. And anyway, the essence of Diksha is Shiksha. So let's go back to that script where, that part, because you actually, it was the Harinama Chintamani, and let me tell you what it actually said. Okay, so can you still see me? Am I still on your screen, or?
Yep.
Okay, good, because I'm looking at just my script now. So Srila Bhaktivinoda in Harinama Chintamani says, okay, the first is the Sampradayera Adi Guru, the primeval guru of the tradition. So that's, in our Sampradaya, it's Lord Brahma. He's, prehistoric. And then, through the yugas, we have, famous gurus who, as I say, following the primeval guru are the Siksha Guru Pratishtita, greatly revered preceptors who keep the tradition's teachings intact over long spans of time. And then but when the Thakur identified the third guru in this, it's Harinama Chintamani, chapter 6. He's talking about Guru Ravagya, don't neglect or offend the guru. We say disobey the orders of the spiritual master or consider him to be an ordinary person. So the Thakur talks about, but when the Thakur identified the third guru, he described him in the superlative. Quote, however, the Adyacharya, or original guru of a disciplic line is appropriately worshipped and respected as the Guru Shiromani, the topmost crown jewel of the spiritual masters. His perfect philosophical conclusions are to be followed by all in his succession. Any contrary instructions will not be accepted. Okay, so I don't know if I mentioned last time, but devotees were writing Prabhupada letters as soon as they saw that disciplic succession list. Then they were asking, what does this mean, disciplic succession? Where's Arjuna? You know, he's our hero from the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada is explaining in different letters that to follow, to be in the disciplic succession means to accept the disciplic conclusion. It doesn't mean you're coming in a particular Diksha line. So Prabhupada said, so Lord Chaitanya, he accepted, I'm paraphrasing now the letters, bits of letters he was writing devotees. Lord Chaitanya, he accepted Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so did Arjuna. Now they're not, in the same succession technically, but they are ultimately because they accept the same conclusion. Arjuna said, Parang Brahma, Parang Dhamma, you're God, to Arjuna. And 4,500 years later, Mahaprabhu is preaching that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada gave the example in another letter that it's like a big oak tree and there's many branches and there's innumerable. You can't count the leaves. But if you pluck one leaf, Prabhupada said in this letter, from one side of the big oak tree, and then you go way to the other side, big spreading oak, you pluck another leaf and you examine them. And Prabhupada said, the taste, he said the taste, the characteristics are the same because the essence is still there. It's from the same tree. So whether it's Sampradaya Radiguru or Shiksha Guru Pratishtita or Guru Shiromani, it's really about the Shiksha. It's about the instruction. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we are in Prabhupada's Sangha as long as we accept what Prabhupada has given us, because acharyas differ. Acharyas have their own little angles of vision. Even in the Gaudiya Math, you'll see dramatically in lesson 4 how Prabhupada wanted us to respect his god brothers, but he did not want to take intimate shiksha from them because their mood was different. It was only our Prabhupada, as it turned out, who the depth of Prabhupada's surrender empowered him to do what no one else ever did. Turn Mlechas Yavanas, Videshis, people on the other side of the ocean, into Vaishnavas. So he was being uniquely empowered to do what no one ever did. So we see all teachers and teachings through Prabhupada's eyes. Even if you're not his Diksha disciple, Prabhupada, as you probably know, is the foundational Shiksha Guru of all devotees in ISKCON, regardless of their generation, their God family, whatever. We all share that foundational guru, that core identity as Prabhupada Nugas. So it's really all about the Shiksha, ultimately. And the Diksha, if the Diksha Guru is genuine, if he's authentic, what's he doing? He's giving you Prabhupada Shiksha. He's enriching, enhancing, and deepening your relationship with Srila Prabhupada. The Diksha, I think I mentioned this last time too, the ceremony is certainly divine in front of the deities and the Vaishnavas and the sacred fire. You make vows and the Guru gives you your Krishna name, Das and Dasi. And the spiritual master's body is considered spiritual too if it's 10% engaged in Krishna's service. But it's really the Guru's instructions, his shiksha. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. That's how we live forever with our Gurus, and especially with our Prabhupada. He's our Guru Shiromani. And anybody inside or outside ISKCON who teaches anything contradictory to Prabhupada's Siddhanta is in a different Sangha. That's all there is to it. I can be even officially inside ISKCON, but if I stray, if I don't regularly avail myself of Prabhupada's vast vani, then I'm going to, sooner or later, my preaching is going to become a little strange if I'm not daily drinking at the fount of Prabhupada's books, letters, room conversations, morning walks. Yeah, it's really all about the shiksha.
Wonderful, and thank you so much for that response. And I just want to say that I was not negating on the point of these gurus are not being important. They are very important, and they appreciate. I was just trying to wonder that if diksha is not so important or not. I mean, it's important, but not so
Important.
mandatory. And not
It's
so
very
mandatory.
important. It's very important. It's not. It's one of the. It's in the first. Among the first 10 things we have to do, says Rupa Goswami. Guru Ashraya. We have to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. We have to take initiation from the spiritual master. But there's a vast difference between a regular guru and the great acharyas. So even though Prabhupada, formed a GBC to manage the society and wanted us, his disciples, to continue the disciplic succession. And then, of course, he wants us to grow up and take disciples ourselves, and so on and on and on through the generations. That's never to replace him. Yeah. And glorious are the gurus who do that. That's why we love them, because they bring us closer to Srila Prabhupada. And I think last time maybe I shared that story of the Mataji who hadn't taken initiation for 17 years. Did I tell that story?
I don't think so.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. Maybe I must have missed it. I'm sorry.
I gave an example of a colleague of mine in ISKCON education who read Prabhupada's Gita in 1987, but didn't take initiation until 2004. And there's a whole story of what happened to her, of how that worked, how that happened. But I think I'll save it because it's very powerful and dramatic. And it has to do with the relationship between our founder Acharya and gurus who come after him. I think I'll save that. Okay. So you were making a point though, Prabhu.
Yeah. So I'm so happy that we're having this conversation, and it's wonderful. The whole when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was doing his preaching mission, he went and found several upper sampradayas, Aul, Baul, and several upper sampradayas,
Right.
and all of them he classified based on their practices. So are we saying that if there are several people who are following Srila Prabhupada, but they may not practically be in ISKCON, so are we still calling them as a bona fide practitioners? I'm trying not to be an institutionally thinking, but I'm philosophically I'm trying to understand, because Ritviks can use the same argument and say that, hey, I am officially following Srila Prabhupada's instruction. Of course, the argument of interpretation comes in here. So I'm slightly still confused on the point of the importance of diksha versus siksha. Whilst siksha is the primary need of the sampradaya and growth. So I'm not sure if I'm making my point very clear, but at least
no, you are. Yeah, it's a good point. And just this morning we were discussing this in our sabha. We also have a sabha, and trying to help the GVC. And one of the ways we're trying to help the GVC is by improving our understanding of Guru Tattva, which is no small thing to understand. So, for example, let's take a practical example. Say someone wants to participate in ISKCON, but they took initiation from some other guru, even in Gaudiya, ISKCON isn't the only Gaudiya Sangha, although, of course, because of Prabhupada's stature, it's the most prominent. So say they took initiation from someone else, but they're inspired by Prabhupada's ISKCON Sangha, the depth and the breadth of the preaching mission. So they're certainly welcome to come and serve inside ISKCON, provided that they accept Srila Prabhupada as their foundational Shiksha Guru. That's all. So to do that, that means they have to be well acquainted with Prabhupada's Vani, especially his books, his spoken word and his written word. So this will happen more and more and more as the years go by. There will be a proliferation of different sanghas, but so it's like, for example, in the old days in ancient India, the gurus were not accountable to some big worldwide institution. There was no GBC. This was something introduced by Bhaktivinoda Thakur to try to get Mahaprabhu's prediction, which I read in from Chaitanya Bhagavat: in every town and village my name will be sung and preached. So the Thakur, once he had rediscovered Mahaprabhu's pure teachings and convinced the Bhadralok, the Bengali aristocracy, to take a fresh look at Bengali, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, then he conceived of a global mission to start making this happen. Now, he realized that his days were numbered, or he wasn't going to have time to do that. But Prabhupada called Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur the pioneer of the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. And so the Thakur, he envisioned that this isn't going to be the job of one or two or three gurus. This is going to take, a global network of gurus and disciples, supervised, overseen by a governing body commission. So, and then he prayed for his array of Vishnu, send someone from your personal staff to come and help me take it to the next level. And sure enough, the person who would become Srila Bhaktisiddhanta appeared and did actually found an organization. First since the Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha in the 1500s. And 64 months and thousands of disciples and printing presses. And he sent the first preachers outside of India to the West. But unfortunately, as we know from the history that Prabhupada told us, his disciples didn't obey his instructions to carry on the mission after his demise. They did not form a GBC. That was the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta embraced that vision and told his disciples to form a governing body, continue initiating people in the Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Vaishnava line. But they didn't. They began competing. Who's going to replace Bhaktisiddhanta? Well, guess what? You don't replace a founder acharya. You simply cooperate to prosecute his mission, worship his murti, study his books. Sound familiar? That's what we do every morning and all day. So all those people who were competing to replace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, they were committing aparad, and for that offense they fell down. And even when Prabhupada emerged as the only one still hadn't given up on the mission by the 1960s, he solicited their help, writing letters, and they wouldn't help him. He had very little help, very little. Finally, his godnephew, Sripad Narayan Maharaj, sent him some mridungas and some incense. But you'll see in the next lesson, actually, how Prabhupada was soliciting their help, and they couldn't cooperate. The demon of non-cooperation, which had, fragmented the Gaudiya mission in the 1930s, it was still alive and well, that demon, in the 1960s. So Prabhupada, he was forced to do something by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his own Guru Maharaj. He was forced to make a clean break from the debacle, from the catastrophe that had become the Gaudiya Mat and start a whole new branch, as he puts it in CC. It's a fresh branch of the Gaudiya mission. Yeah, we're going to take a look at that more in the next. So, yeah, this is unprecedented. We're still trying to come to terms with how gurus are accountable to a global governing body. That's unprecedented, and it's not easy to do, but we have to do it because it's the vision of our Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas, and that's what will enable us to cooperate and find unity amidst so much diversity. Yeah, we have so many. Materially, we're so different, but spiritually, we're united around Prabhupada's orders. Okay, good question, Prabhu. So
Thank you, Prabhu.
yeah, there's institutional. So if somebody comes into our sangha, they're welcome, but then they have to cooperate with Prabhupada's vision. We all have to be accountable to his authority structure. Temple presidents, regional secretaries, GBCs. We have to be obedient to Prabhupada's vision of how we're going to work together. And it's not easy because sometimes we're very different. We have different perspectives on things. And in lesson 8, you'll see it's called To Love is to Cooperate. That's the most challenging lesson of the series. How to find that unity amidst the diversity, how to cooperate. It's not easy in the age of non-cooperation and quarrel and everything else. So there are, even though the guru-disciple relationship traditionally, say from India, is not institutional, but now we're in the context to spread it all over the world, to make Mahaprabhu's prediction come true. We're in the context of a worldwide institution. So we have to do the tapas of working together. We can't just go off and do our own thing. I mean, we can, but then Prabhupada gave the example from Aesop's fables of the bundle of sticks. You take the sticks out one by one and you can easily break those sticks. So that's Maya, she works on us from the inside. But if we're strong, if we remain strong by being faithful to Prabhupada's Vani, then together Maya can't break the bundle because we're together. United we stand, divided we fall. All right. So,
Thank you, Prabhu. I have several questions, so probably in the next week, I'll bother you. Thank you so
no,
much
they're
for
good.
your.
So let's see what anybody else. We want to field your questions, and there's no such thing as a silly question, right? This is everything you ever wanted to know about the founder Acharya, but were afraid to ask. This is a safe space.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandvat Pranam. All goes to Srila Prabhupada.
Hi, Prabhuji, Gorgadadhar, Knoxville is here.
So, just Prabhu, I won't take lot of your time. Like we are on the neck of the time. So one thing, Prabhu, like I was like, so when you said this third level, actually, the original guru or the Adya Acharya.
Yeah.
So that thing isn't like that position. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had that position. Like how come like Prabhupada was basically like that position was kind of quoted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Right.
So is that something like he was putting himself in that position, or like he was predicting for the future to occupy that third level?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, as I said, was providing the literary seeds of the founder Acharya principle, which finally fructified when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta founded. He actually founded in 3 dimensions an institution, whereas Srila Bhaktivinoda, although he was the visionary, Prabhupada said he's the pioneer of the Krishna consciousness movement for the modern age. He knew he didn't have time to manifest it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur he's a great previous Acharya. I mean, Prabhupada went so far as to say, I am nothing compared to Bhaktivinoda. he was, he envisioned the whole thing. But by Lord Chaitanya's arrangement, he wasn't the one to actually manifest it. So it was his son that manifested the Gaudiya mission, which Pravindra Swarup Prabhu in his booklet referred to as the beta version of ISKCON. It was the preliminary version of ISKCON. If those people, if his disciples had followed his instructions to work cooperatively under a GBC, then maybe we'd all be in the, part of the Gaudiya Math. But they didn't. So Prabhupada, he was forced to found a fresh branch. Between 1965, you're going to see in the next lesson, actually you're anticipating the next lesson, Gorgadana Prabhu. Between 1965 and 1970, Srila Prabhupada realized what Lord Chaitanya was asking him to do when his godbrothers didn't cooperate. Lord Chaitanya and his Guru Maharaj were saying, they're not going to help you. They can't help you. Their offense is too great, and they can't cooperate because there's too much, as we say, bad blood had gone down over the decades. They were just living isolated, in their mutts. So divided we fall, right? So they were all divided up. So Prabhupada was forced to, he had no idea of founding a new, he just wanted to, if you go to the letters, if you have the Veda base, you go to the letters, especially go to one letter, which we're going to look at next time, to his godbrother Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, who was a big mover and a shaker, as we say, in the Gaudiya Math in the 30s. So Prabhupada was appealing to him to cooperate with him, to help Prabhupada do what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had wanted them all to do, which was to work together and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. But it was only our Prabhupada who found the depth of the surrender necessary to get the empowerment to do it. Amazingly enough. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, you'll see in lesson 4, knew that. So before he disappeared, even though he knew what was coming, he can see that, you'll see, Agunj Valbe, there will be fire in the mutt. The fire of dissension will spread and destroy, he told our Prabhupada at Radhakund in 1935 on Brajmandal Parikram. But still, why was he telling Abhay Charanavinda that? Because he knew that here is the person who would be able to be capable of picking up the pieces of this mission. And out of the ashes of the Gaudiya mission, the Gaudiya Math, would rise the phoenix of ISKCON. The bird would fly anew, fly afresh. So Prabhupada, he became the founder Acharya of ISKCON, which is a branch of the Chaitanya tree, of the Bhakti Kalpataru. This is all in CC. Does that help?
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, bro.
Okay, but you're making me give away the next lesson, the next 2 lessons. But it'll be more detail, but it's good. Actually, lessons 2 to 6, they're all history lessons. It's really all about appreciating Prabhupada through the history of what led up to Prabhupada's coming and what he did. So these are good questions and they're good lessons.
Thank you very much, bro. Hare Krishna, bro.
Hare Bol. How are we doing? It's 5 past the hour. Are there any more questions, comments?
I was just requesting that if you don't mind, giving away your email ID, maybe some of the questions I can, email it to you so you can kind of prioritize or combine them in your next session. So that way we will be able to, some of them probably may not be, too relevant to this context also. So, I mean, if you have an issue.
Yeah, I think you said that last time. I didn't. And what happened? Nobody sent you any questions because I didn't receive any email. But of course, the questions should be relevant to the lesson.
True, I agree. That's
the
why I said
best
I will email it to you. You have a choice to see what can fit into the context, what you need not respond. So maybe I can send you ahead of time.
Yeah.
Prabhu,
Sure.
I will send you the Prabhu's email, and I have
Sure.
time is over, so I have questions too, but we'll probably wait until next.
Well, this,
Tuesday.
yeah, Nitai Gaurasinda Prabhu, you just save them. You don't have to email them to me. Just feed me the questions on the spot.
Okay,
If there
we
is
can
no,
do that. Yeah.
yeah, just save
Well,
them.
so Prabhu, you can send us on our other network group the questions, and we can read it to Prabhu when next Tuesday,
Yes.
Sure.
including my question. At least I have one burning question.
Well, do you have a question that's relevant to this lesson?
I hope so, Maharaj, Prabhu.
Why don't you ask it now?
Oh,
Go ahead.
people are already dropping, and so I don't want to. Maybe my question is, as we, the beginner in this sadhana path, why we need to know all this? Why we need to all this?
What do you need to know, for example, what I was presenting tonight?
Yeah, founder Acharya, we know Prabhupada, we know everything. So why we know all this?
Well, we think we know, but we need more depth. So right now we're in the Sambandha portion of the series, which means we're deepening our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Of course, we haven't even come to Srila Prabhupada specifically. Lesson 1 was the spiritual masters, plural, Guru Tattva, and now a special kind of spiritual master, a rare person, the founder of Acharya, a mega master, a super guru. But it's all leading up to lesson 3, which is the third and final lesson in the Sambandha section. We're going to see how Prabhupada played the part of founder Acharya like no one ever has. So it's increasing our appreciation for Prabhupada. Before we can, deepen our love for him and deepen our commitment to his mission, first we have to understand deeply Prabhupada's position, his greatness. It's kind of like the first canto of Bhagavatam, where you start with Krishna's lotus feet and the creation and the cosmic manifestation. And so by the time you get to the 10th canto, you don't mistake Krishna's smiling face for the smile of some ordinary person. So I think it'll be clearer and clearer and clearer why we need to understand this as the lessons go on, because that's what people say after they've taken the full journey. Oh, Prabhu, I never knew this about Prabhupada. I never knew. I thought, because a lot of people, it's just about their Guru Maharaj, which is great. Guru Maharaj is great. We all need Diksha Gurus and Shiksha Gurus. But in ISKCON, in our ISKCON Sangha, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to, as Lokanath Swami did for Narottam Das Thakur, bring their disciples closer and closer to Prabhupada, from whom we draw our core identity and our foundational relationship. We are Prabhupada Nugas. That's who we are. And that's the only identity that's going to allow us to withstand the ravages of time, which always breaks things apart. We want this Sangha to go on for 10,000 years. So it's very important. We deeply understand Prabhupada's position, and the history is part of that. But I think it'll be more clear in the next lesson when we specifically look at Srila Prabhupada, as fulfilling the role of founder Acharya, like no one ever has. Wow. Okay, that's a good place to break, I think. So that's a good cliffhanger. Okay, I guess we'll let you go. You're later than me. You're 9:10. I'm only at 8:10. So I'm not as sleepy as you folks. Now I understand Maharaj gets up early. He gets sleepy. So I'll have to excuse him, I guess. But I hope he's here, at least in the beginning, to share something. Okay, same time, same place next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hi.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu's already logged off. Amit Bhai, are the girls available to sing the Shinga prayer, or is it a little late for them?
I don't think Amit Bhai and them are even on now.
I think, yeah, that's right. They're gone.
Vivek Bhai is on. Vivek Bhai can sing.
Is Sharon Prabhu will sing the Nishinga prayer?
I volunteered him. He's one thing before Bhaiya starts. I have this on YouTube, so if anyone wants to go back and listen, I can share in the group.
Manjari,
If anyone
thank you so
wants.
much. I was going to say that, at least every week these sessions.
Yes, I
we
have
can
them.
kind of-
So email. I'll send them out in the group.
Great, dear. Fantastic.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Kaladaladarayine. Kaladaladarayine. Hiranyakashi Vuvakshaha. Hiranyakashi Vuvakshaha. Shiladankhana khalaye. Shiladankhana khalaye. Ito Narsingo Bharato Narsingo. Ito Narsingo Bharato Narsingo. Yato yato yami tato Narsingo. Yato yato yami tato Narsingo. Ahi Narsingo. Hridaye Narsingo. Ahi Narsingo. Hridaye Narsingo. Narasingamatim Sharanam Prapate. Narasingamatim Sharanam Prapate. Tavakara Kamala Pare. Nakamadbuddha Shringa. Kalida Hiranakashipo Tanubringa. Keshavati Tanarari Rupa. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Tavakara Kamala Pare. Nakamadbuddha Shringa. Kalida Hiranakashipo Tanubringa. Keshavati Tanarari Rupa. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jagadish Hare. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jagadish Hare. Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jai Jagadish Hare. Jagadish Hare. Jaya Narasingha 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 Jaya Narasingha Jaya Narasingha Jaya Narasingha Jaya Narasingha Jaya Prahlad Mara Prahlad Mara Prahlad Mara Jaya Prahlad Mara Jaya Prahlad Mara Prahlad Mara Prahlad Mara Jaya Prahlad Mara Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Gurudeva, 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 Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva.
Yeah. So fun.
Thank you, Prabhu. So that concludes this evening's program. Everyone will go ahead and unmute themselves. We'll recite the Vaishnava Pranam prayer.
Before that, Manjari, can you please start? Can you make sure that you record all those programs on Monday and Tuesday? Next week
Yeah,
will
I
be
do.
DG.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because Giriraj Maharaj has been sharing whatever I record. He shares it then.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, even our regular sessions are great, Prabhu. I mean, it's a good memory. Why don't we have a ISKCON Nashville channel? I mean, I'm just wondering.
Because Prabhu, I only have so much storage with what I pay. The storage is quite expensive.
For
we
YouTube,
we
is
can pay more. That's not a problem. That's not. I think our board of directors, some members are here, so they can. I think they can. I think they will agree with that. We can.
no, but why you consume storage space, Manjari? It's YouTube, right? I mean, you can just stream into YouTube and it'll be there.
Some of the YouTube ones cut off after a while, or if we do like the storage, the cloud. Like I was doing the cloud storage for Giraj Maharaj's presentations, they only hold so much.
No, I was actually thinking something else. We'll separately talk about it. I'll tell you.
Okay. Okay. Prabhu will guide you on that. Okay. Okay. Let's do the Rashmi Pranam.
कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धु एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।